Hey guys, welcome back to Jess Reads Romance. I'm Jessin, and today I'm here with my first weekly wrap up for 2022. It's very exciting, the first week in January. It does technically, for being technical, I read some of these at the end of December because I wanted to start my 2022 books early. And it had a lot to do with the first book that I'm going to be reviewing. I'd already done my favorites list for 2021, and I was just like, this is so unfair. This is so unfair. This book came out on December 28th, and I just feel like it's going to be forgotten. And I wanted it to be on a favorites list, so it's officially on my favorites list so far of 2022. But that book is The Temptation of a Highlander, and Elisa Braden has done it once again with the Midnight in Scotland series. I just absolutely love the McPherson brothers. They are my ideal Scottish Highland male, and I just love their family. I love their family so much. So I was actually kind of like expecting for Alexander to get his book, but actually Campbell. This is Campbell's book, and he is one of the tallest ones, I think. Like, all of these men are uber giants. Like, they are so freaking tall. And Cam is like a bit of a loner. And his heroine, Clarissa, is someone that we've never really met before. At least I don't recall us meeting her in the Rescued from Ruin series, but I could be wrong. But she is friends with Kate, who is Broderick's wife, so she's the heroine of book 2. And Clarissa is in a bit of a bind. She and her grandmother are not being taken care of by the heir to the earldom. Her grandfather was the earl. So the estate went to a distant cousin, and he is kind of reneging on the agreed upon amount that her grandmother was going to get as the dowager countess, and they have to economize, sell a lot of stuff. If Clarissa could marry, then that would be helpful. But she has a bit of a problem because she's been a wallflower for a while. Now she's recently being noticed, and there's this guy that has taken note of her. And it's become a bit of a problem because he's a stalker. The things that he's doing feel very dangerous and unhinged. And we just get a tiny glimpse of this in the beginning, that she gets this note and she's like, it's starting up again. He said he'd stop. We don't feel safe. We need to get out of here. I do want to warn that there is a death of a pet in here quite early on in the beginning because the stalker is that unhinged. It's not graphic, but it's very sad. Clarissa feels like she needs to get out of Dodge. She needs to go somewhere where he wouldn't expect her to go and he wouldn't be able to follow her. So she and her grandmother pack up and impose upon Kate, hoping that they could stay in the Highlands until he loses interest again. They really don't have a solid plan, but while Clarissa is hanging out with Kate, living in her house, she gets extremely tongue-tied when Campbell visits. And Campbell is just this huge, like I said, he's this huge man. There's a scene where they want the piano to be moved and he almost single-handedly can pick up the piano. And the way that she becomes this very tongue-tied and she says very inappropriate things on accident, like everything that she's saying could be interpreted as something a little bit naughty, and she's not meaning for it to come out that way, but it's just the way that she rambles on when Campbell's around, and everyone is kind of witnessing this. So she hasn't even told Kate the real reason why she's there. But once it's discovered that they've been found out, that this guy who's stalking her has found her, she has to tell Kate because she's like, it's not fair. I don't want my friend to be in danger. I don't want her husband's family to be in danger. The McPhersons, they've been nothing but nice to me. So they're forced to tell Kate and Broderick, and Broderick's idea is that Campbell should guard her. Campbell has a farm and he bought it from this man. He didn't really take care of it. And Campbell kind of has lost the will to really live. He has this guilt associated with a woman from his past. And also we find out that when he was involved in the war, the only reason why he really survived is because his brother Alexander went to war with him, and it gave him motivation to stay alive to protect his brother. So we just feel like Campbell is just existing. His house is extremely unhomey. It's just wood, no furniture, only furniture enough for him to sit. It's been neglected so severely because he's such a loner. And when Clarissa gets there, she does her best to make it a home, and she even uses some cloth to make drapes because she's like, it's the least I can do. I'm putting these people in danger and I want to make Campbell feel at home. And it's not that he doesn't have the money to furnish the place or anything. He's just, like I said, he's just existing. And the chemistry between Campbell and Clarissa is really great. There's also a bit of mysticism in this book. In The Making of the Highlander, which is the first book in the series, Annie, Campbell's stepsister, has a touch of the sight. She sees this boy, this ghost. And similarly, Campbell has the sight as well. And Mrs. McBean is probably my favorite side character. She's a through line throughout the entire series, and I really love her. She's a local woman, and she is almost obsessed with matchmaking the McPhersons, and she always gives them like tonics to be like, yeah, this is a fertility charm basically, or this will make him randy and not be able to resist you and stuff. And of course, Clarissa gets the same treatment as well as Campbell. Clarissa gets this amulet that she has to wear, and it's so funny because of course Mrs. McBean knows exactly who their perfect match is, and she absolutely helps that along. So I really love this because it's a bodyguard romance and it's forced proximity because Clarissa is forced to live with Campbell. And her grandmother stays behind at Broderick and Kate's house because she kind of felt ill for a little bit, and so they're like, it's best if she stays. That means that Clarissa and Campbell are alone a lot of the time. And I just really love it. I really, really love the way that she writes characters and the emotional development between them. It's sweet and beautiful and just, it's painstakingly gorgeous. It's just so amazing. I love Elise Braden so much. She can write anything and I will eat it all up because these Highlanders are just amazing. So yeah, this book is 6 stars. Oh yeah, that's another thing. So I decided that I had so many 5 stars and 4 stars when I was doing my 2021 wrap up that I was like, I need a way to distinguish what are my favorites from those 5 stars. If I have 100 something 5 stars, that doesn't really tell you much. Like how do I distinguish that this was a book that I have absolutely no problem with, I want to recommend it to everybody? How do I distinguish those from these books are the books that I'm obsessed with, like Unhealthy Obsession, more than 5 stars. So I know that a few people do 6-star ratings and I decided to do that. So I am going to have 6 stars included in 2022. So that is my first read of 2022 and it's 6 stars and it was amazing. Then actually, I was in the middle of doing a reading blog that started at the end of December and spilled over into January, and it was books that I originally had never planned on reading. The first book was The Naked Fisherman. I've read one book, Look the Part by Julie Ann, before, and I didn't really love it, and I never really wanted to pick up another book by her, and everyone tried to get me to read more of her. I was kind of resistant to it, but since this duet was included on their favorites list for 2021, I decided that I would just give them another shot. I always like to give an author 3 books to convince me that maybe the first book that I picked up by them was a fluke. I don't always pick up the next book, the second book, but if people are adamant that I need to try more of their books and maybe it was just that book that didn't work for me, I will give them another shot. So The Naked Fisherman duet, the first one does end on a cliffhanger, The Naked Fisherman, and it's an age gap romance between a very naive heroine who's very sheltered. She was brought up in a Christian household that was very restricting, very, very conservative in their beliefs, and it feels like she hasn't really gotten a lot of exposure beyond that sphere during her high school years when she was growing up with her grandparents as her biggest influences in her life. Well, Reese, her mother had actually gone to jail and she's recently out and she's living in Colorado. Since Reese doesn't know what to do with her life, she's not really sure what she wants to go to college for, even though her grandparents really want her to just go. She wants to take a gap year and she's going to go visit her mom and try to reconnect with her. She lands in Denver and her mom is very excited to be with her. She's living in this basement. She's renting a basement apartment from this guy named Fisher, and his last name is Man, Fisherman. When Reese first meets Fisher, he is in a towel, so he's almost completely naked, and this is a very, very shocking thing for her because, like I said, she's extremely sheltered. Unfortunately, this age gap romance, which I normally love age gap romances, did not work for me because I felt like The maturity levels were just so off kilter in this one that it made me really scratch my head and think, why is this hero interested in this heroine? They're so on different playing fields. And it really creeped me out the way that he pursued her, because it really felt like it was very physical, very lusting, like, and also on his part, I couldn't see it as any other way except that this would be a challenge to see if I can get this good girl to be a little bit bad with me. And I didn't love that for her. I didn't love that for her because I feel like she needed some guidance. She needed definitely to grow up, to be exposed to different ways of life and people and cultures. And I didn't love that the first person that she meets kind of felt a little manipulative. And this was like her first crush, and it just felt very schoolgirlish, and I couldn't get on board with their relationship in book 1. I hated it a lot. I have a whole vlog on it where I rant and go into specific detail with what didn't work for me, but I gave this book 2 stars. Like, I very much just disliked it on so many levels, so many levels. I did read the second one because I had a feeling that most people would say that the second one would make me understand the characters more. I was very skeptical. I picked it up anyway after reading the Elisa Braden. Actually, I felt a lot better. I had a bit of a pick-me-up, and I picked up the Lost Fisherman. And there is a time jump, and I thought that it was the best decision that Julie Ann could have made, because there's no way that I would have believed that Reese, her level of maturity, could have had a drastic transformation in a very short amount of time. And also, I just really hated Fisher, and I wanted her to go out and experience other things before she decided that, yes, this asshole is my soulmate. So there is an amnesia trope with this one. Fisher does have a motorcycle accident, and he remembers his family. He even remembers Reese's mom, Rory, but he doesn't remember when Reese came to visit. So he has lost all the memory of all the things that happened with Reese and him. And like I said, it's been 5 years, and now she feels like an adult. She feels way more confident. So I enjoyed her character a lot more. I also really enjoyed Fisher a lot more because he wasn't being this very mean, sarcastic, I'm looking down on you because you're such a child type of character. Like, he was so mean in the first book. I hated him, and I couldn't understand why she liked him. I couldn't understand why she thought she was in love with him. It was just so mind-boggling to me. I think Julie Ann went way too far in the first book for me to want to be invested in those characters. And the only reason why I went to the second book was because I was doing this vlog. I would not have finished the first book firsthand, and I would not have gone to the second book if I felt like this wasn't more of like an experiment type of thing. Like, I need to have all the data before I make a final decision. So it was a little bit more of a clinical reason why I pushed through rather than I felt compelled, because I didn't feel compelled by their relationship, which is why it's so mind-boggling that I rated the Lost Fisherman 4 stars. I felt like their relationship felt real. I felt a connection between them where I didn't in the first book. So that duet is very just insane, the way that it played out to me. And I can't recommend it to people because I was so frustrated with the first book. My feelings with their relationship in the Lost Fisherman does not change my mind about how I felt about what happened in the Naked Fisherman. So it's just like a really weird reading experience for me. So those 2 books, I talk a lot about it in my vlog again. And then I read The Redemption, which is the 4th book in Filthy Rich American series. I read The Initiation and The Obsession last year, and I didn't love McAllister's character, which is why I stopped reading that series. But a couple people, again, when I was asking what are books that you feel like I should give another try, and The Redemption came up over and over again, and everyone said that they really loved McAllister's Redemption. I was very skeptical because he was my most hated character from book 1 and book 2, and jumping into The Redemption without reading book 3 was fine for me, and I really feel like his book stood alone very well as an age gap office romance. I really loved McAllister's heroine, Sophie. She felt like she could handle him. He was someone who was so used to getting his own way, and she was very quick on her feet, very quick-witted, and confident, and I really like that about them. It is very, steamy. Their relationship was quite, physical, but also emotional. I felt like she was a good match for McAllister, so I did end up by giving that book 4 stars. And then I read It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, my last book for that vlog. I have very hit or miss experiences when it comes to Tessa Bailey's books. I was not going to read it, but again, it popped up on a lot of people's favorites list. So I thought I'd check it out. And the main character, Piper, oh my God, what's her name? It is Piper. The main character, Piper, she is a very spoiled socialite who's had everything handed to her, and she lives her life on social media, and it influences her to do things that are not great. She gets in trouble, she gets arrested, and her stepfather has had enough. He's like, you need to grow up. And I've done wrong by you girls. She and her sister had always grown up with her stepfather as a father figure because their father died a long time ago, and her mom was so hurt by their dad's death that she just left it all behind. So they really have no memories or even stories about their dad. And that's how their stepfather, it's mostly Piper, her sister just wants to come along as support, but he's decided to hopefully teach her a lesson, teach her to have some value in hard work and the value of money, decides to make her go to her dad's hometown in Washington, small town, a fishing community, and that's how her dad died, at sea. Her dad had owned the local bar, and her stepfather had been paying this guy to just manage it, just keep it, and one day we'll give it to the girls or whatever. It's their technically inheritance that they've never heard of before. No one's ever talked about that part of their mom's life. So now Piper is forced to go to this small town and exist on the very little money that her stepfather has given her, and she needs to find a job, she needs to do whatever. She ends up by meeting Braden, who is a local fisherman. He is a widower, and he does not love Piper on first sight. She's very spoiled and just very uppity, and this is not the type of person who fits in with this town. So we have a little bit of clashing of personalities, but Piper's pretty upbeat throughout the whole thing. And the thing about this is, because I've seen a lot of people who actually did not like It Happened One Summer, and I have a feeling it has a lot to do with the heroine. She's written in a very unlikable way. The way that she's so spoiled and so obsessed with being a socialite is not endearing, because she's not a bad person. She's nice. She's just a little bit misguided sometimes. And I was willing to see if there was any character growth or transformation enough that it didn't bother me reading about her character in the beginning. And she doesn't have like a drastic personality change during the book, which I kind of liked. But my problem with It Happened One Summer was the third act conflict. I thought it was too over the top, too much. There was too much going on. I felt like less would have been more, and that's why that book was only 4 stars for me. But it really wasn't a bad overall vlog. The only book that I really didn't love was The Naked Fisherman. So that was a very interesting start to 2022 with that vlog. Then I decided to listen to the audiobook for Managed by Kristen Callahan. I'd done a Rockstar reading vlog. The first book is Idol, and that hero was a lead singer of this band called Kill John. So this book, Managed, is actually about the manager of that band, Kill John, and everyone says that this one was their favorite one out of the whole entire series. I love the way that it begins. We have a first meeting on a plane. Sophie, our heroine, she has just been upgraded to first class. She's like, this must be a mistake, because I did not buy a first class ticket, but she's like, okay, this is great. Well, her seatmate is not happy about that because he bought both seats. He did not want anybody to occupy the seat next to him. The problem is this flight has been overbooked, so they have no choice in the matter. They're forced to sit next to each other, and it's kind of really great. I love the banter that goes on between them. I love the sparks that were flying during this flight, and towards the end of it, after there was some inappropriate jokes being made, some very naughty banter being thrown around, they find out that Sophie's actually going to interview for a job to help with the marketing for the band. So the person who works under Gabriel, the hero, has recruited Sophie, wants to interview her for the job, and Gabriel had no idea until later, toward the end of the flight. Once they land, it is really interesting, but the most interesting thing is that Sophie's actually has a little bit of a history with the band. She used to be involved with this guy who took paparazzi photos, and she kind of got involved in all that. And one of their band members, Jax, was going to hit rock bottom and he OD'd. Sophie ended up by taking a photo of this when she found out where Jax was, decided not to use it, but her boyfriend stole the picture anyway. But everyone knows that it was her that actually took the photo. So Gabriel does not trust Sophie. So all the things that happened on the plane, it's that fragile trust was kind of a little bit broken, but he's also a person that doesn't let anybody in. He can't help but still be fascinated by her. So I really like the dynamic between Gabriel and Sophie. I really do like it. I did enjoy the inks in this book. There was lots of secret relationship vibes about this pairing that I really did enjoy. But of course, the misunderstanding was not to my liking toward the end of the book. It wasn't terrible, but it just wasn't it was just okay. So this book ended up by being 4 stars. Next, I read Descent by Sam Mariano. This one just kind of like popped up on my radar. Sam Mariano writes some dark romance. And I saw on the day that it came out that she had done a post saying if you had read the series with Mateo and if you read the book with Carter, then you should be fine with Calvin, this new hero who was, not a good guy. And this book has very disturbing themes to it, like a lot of Sam Mariano's books do. So when I say that this book is dark, please read the trigger warnings, because she does tell you that this is not for everybody. So trigger warning for non-consensual scenes, stalking and kidnapping, lots of manipulation, all that jazz. Anyway, it's very not healthy the way that this relationship is and starts and all that. Hallie is out with her best friend. Her best friend's about to get married, and she didn't really have a bachelorette party in the sense that there was like a lot of people. It was just basically Hallie and her best friend. I think her name is Charity. So they're out at this bar, and Charity is heavy drinking. She's like, shots for everyone. And Hallie had a boyfriend that she recently broke up with. She's the type of person that she would rather somebody break up with her because she doesn't want to be the person to do that. She's very non-confrontational. She gets this text from her ex-boyfriend saying that he wants to get back together, yada, yada, yada. And when she's pretty firm on being like, it's done, it's over, he then says like, hey, I'm in trouble, I need your help. So she is a good person. She's like, what happened? What do you need? And she gets a call from his boss, and his boss is like, if you care about him, you need to come over here. You need to come over here. So she has this conversation with this stranger named Calvin on the phone, and she decides to actually go and leave. There was a limo that was sent to the club to pick her up, and she didn't even have a chance to go back inside the club because she left to be on the phone to tell her friend Charity that she was leaving. So she just goes, and she ends up at this sex club. Her ex-boyfriend's there, and it is a trap. It was a ruse because Calvin, who had previously seen Hallie and her boyfriend at a work party, kind of became obsessed with her. Now that they're broken up, he's like, I want her for myself. And apparently he has rape fantasies, which he plays out with people who are consenting to role-playing this. But it's become not enough for him. And there's something about Hallie that he cannot pass up. There's something about her. So he decides to lure her there and not give her a choice and force her. So that does happen. It is not at all consensual. It is completely rape. But what I find interesting about the way that Sam Mariano wrote this dark romance with a hero who is a little bit psychotic is that we actually get his point of view. And as crazy as it sounds, when he's thinking about her, I didn't fear for her life like I feared for other heroines' lives when I'm reading a Sam Mariano book, because the way that he thought about her was I didn't feel like he posed a real danger to her. Like, I felt when I was reading her other characters that her other heroes could absolutely destroy the heroine, either emotionally or physically harm them to the point that maybe they would die. I don't know, And for Calvin, I didn't get that feeling because we got his point of view, and his obsession with her was real. Like, he was just very obsessed with her. He thought she was beautiful. He didn't even think that her boyfriend deserved her. So it was, I don't know, it just didn't feel as dangerous. And of course, my mindset, I'm like, I'm reading a dark romance, so I'm expecting something really dark. And I guess I didn't expect it to be not quite as dangerous as I thought it would be. So it just turns into like a stalking, I want to have you, and I'm rich and powerful enough to cut you off from everybody in your life, because all she really has is her best friend Charity, and he becomes her world after he forces her to move in with him, and he takes care of her. And that's basically what the book is about. He just wants to be in a relationship with her and forces her to be in a relationship no matter what she wants. And eventually she starts falling in love or developing Stockholm Syndrome, whatever way you want to look at it, but that's the relationship. So it wasn't my favorite by Sam Mariano. Like I said, it lacked a compelling reason for me to get invested in the hero's psyche because we already had his point of view. And it was just kind of like, he's just a very rich person who just wants this girl in his life and will do whatever it takes to have her, and he's unwilling to wait for her to want him back first. And that's basically what the book was about. I gave it 4 stars. There was parts where I was just like very bored. There was nothing much happening besides her just being in the apartment basically on house arrest, and kind of really bored with that situation. But it was quite low angst, and it's weird to say that, but for a dark romance it was quite low angst. Then I read Damaged by Onley James, and this is a novella in her Unnecessary Evil series. It is an MM series about serial killers, psychopaths who absolutely would not blink an eye at killing somebody, especially when their loved ones are in danger. And the interesting thing about it is that the hero is not a Mulvaney brother. This is someone that we haven't met yet in the series. His name's Dimitri, and this is Calliope's son. Calliope is a character that we've only kind of heard the voice of. Nobody has seen her. None of the Mulvaneys have met Calliope except Thomas, the father. So all the murder boys have not met Calliope, don't really know much about her. She's a mystery. She's just a voice that they contact when they need her to like break into files. She's very tech savvy. And we find out that the reason why Calliope and Thomas had met is because Calliope, when she was 16, she had a son, and she started recognizing the signs of a psychopath in her son. His lack of emotion and his obsession, and he had this friend in school. He knew that his friend was being abused. He's like 4 years old or 5 years old, knew his friend was being abused and set his parents' bed on fire. So this is a second chance romance between Dimitri and Arlo, the friend that he was defending. Years later, because they had moved away, Calliope was trying to protect her son. Years later, Dimitri finds Arlo again, and instead of being like, hey, remember me? We used to be friends when we were 5 and I set your parents' bed on fire. He just kind of introduces himself like he doesn't know him, and they work together at a coffee shop. And Arlo seems to have become a victim. He starts dating guys who are also abusive. And Dimitri hopes that one day he won't want that type of guy and will want him. And when a boyfriend who he has recently broken up with comes in and becomes extremely dangerous, Dimitri is forced to step in, and the ruthlessness comes out. So I really love this pairing. It was such a sweet, sweet, beautiful pairing. Lovely friends to lovers, second chance romance. And we do get to see some Mulvaney action, and also a slight teaser toward the end for Headcase, which is the next book in the series. And I'm very excited about that because it was very like an out of context scene. It was like, what's happening? What's happening? But anyway, it was very, very cool. So I really love that. I gave that book 4.5 stars. Next, I read Sustained by Emma Chase. This is a book that was recommended to me during the summer. I had people submit books that they think that I would like. I read the description and I basically just said I would read that or I would not read that. Sustained was something that very much interested me because it was like an opposites attract romance. Jake is a high-powered defense attorney and he is pretty ruthless. He can be detached from his clients who he knows that a lot of them are guilty, and his job is to get them off scot-free. He used to be a troublemaker when he was young, but this judge took an interest in him, and instead of punishing him and ruining the rest of his life, he made him work hard and also put him on the path of, hey, maybe you could have a good life. Are you interested in law? These are things that we do. And Jake did become interested, and now he's a very successful lawyer. He's also a bit of a man whore, and he has this STD scare in the beginning because he really doesn't sleep with the same woman very often or anything. This woman who he slept with about a month ago says, hey, I just recently found out that the boyfriend that I was miserable over the night that we had our one night stand, he had an STD and now I have to contact people. So he has a scare and he's like, maybe I shouldn't be sticking my dick in like everybody that I didn't know. He asked his friends for advice and he was like, normal dating situations. When do people have sex? And they're like, you at least have to go on 3 dates, show an interest and see if the person's crazy and see if they have any skeletons in their closet and if you mesh well together. And he's just like, I don't do this. This is horrible. This is horrible. So poor thing, he's suffering, he can't get any. And one day he's walking down the street and this little boy pickpockets him and he catches him and he's just like, what the hell? And then he recognizes something in this little boy that reminds him of a young Jake, of himself when he was young. He's like, I could either get him in trouble with the cops or I could kind of like teach him a lesson, go talk to his parents, and hopefully they will be like my mom was. Maybe he'll turn it around. He's only 9 years old. So he drives this little boy, Rory, to his house and he sees a very beautiful woman open the door. Her name's Chelsea and she seems pretty young. And all of a sudden, kids start pouring out of the woodwork in this house. There's 6 kids, and he finds out that they're orphans. Chelsea's older brother, who is like 15 years older than her, recently died. He and his wife died in a car crash, and he was actually an environmental lobbyist, and so Jake was familiar with who Chelsea's brother was. He has sympathy for these kids and also for Chelsea, trying to wrangle them all. He admires her and he's also attracted to her. And I kind of really love how he gets involved with them. First of all, he's invested in Rory, who is a lot like him. He knows that he is suffering, obviously, because his parents had recently died. It's only been like 2 months or so. So he gives Chelsea his card, like after saying like, look, he tried to steal my wallet and just, let me know if he gets into trouble, whatever. Well, he does eventually get arrested for boosting a car and wrecking it, a very expensive car. So he kind of becomes like the family lawyer. And every time one of these kids are getting into trouble, they're like contacting Jake. And it kind of messes with his love life. He's getting it back on track. And like one moment, he's literally about to bang a woman that he previously was fuck buddies with. And he actually chooses to leave her because he's concerned about the kids and whatever trouble that they're getting into. So he becomes involved with their lives and also with Chelsea. He helps her a lot. And I like the way that it happens naturally. Like he starts becoming invested and he doesn't even know it. He's a person notorious for being very closed off and detached. He has very few friend relationship as well, but for some reason he can't stay away from this family, and I really love that. Now, the only reason why this book wasn't a 5-star, I did end up by giving it 4.5 stars, was because Jake was so great for the majority of the book, and I loved it. It felt very natural. Felt like a very natural, gradual change in his personality, his priorities, him opening up and caring about other people. And then he had lots of hot and cold moments toward the end. Very compact part of the book towards the end. He was very hot and cold, and I didn't love it. I understood why he would get cold feet in this situation, but what I didn't love is that it happened multiple times in a very short amount of time that I felt like was a very short amount of time. And if I was Chelsea, I wouldn't trust him. I'd be like, when would be the next time that you changed your mind about our relationship? And I can't do that. Like, the kids are attached to you. Like, we can't play this game of hot and cold. I'm going to be involved and I'm going to disappear now. So that's the only reason why this book was 4.5 stars. But I really, 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 really loved this book. It had a lot of Takeover vibes by T.L. Swan. I love The Takeover. The kids were standouts as well. And I love when kids are written really well in a book. So yeah, that was really good. Next, I read The Arc for A Brush with Love by Maisie Eddings. This is her debut novel. She's a bookstagrammer and she's also a dentist. So her characters are involved in the dental world. The heroine, Harper, wants to become an oral surgeon. She is very driven. She hasn't had anything handed to her. A lot of her classmates are like legacy, she's called them, like their parents are, dentists or oral surgeons or whatever, and she is carving a place for herself in this world off of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. And she literally has a run-in with the hero named Dan, and she destroys his oh gosh, I'm gonna forget the proper term for it, but it's like a teeth impression. And it's apparently very hard to make, and she is such a blubbering mess over this situation running into him. He's very hot and he's very sweet about it. And she's like, I will help you. I know that takes so long to make. I will help you make another one. So their initial meeting is very sweet. And I really like the interaction where she is actually helping him because he's a first year dental student. She's a fourth year wanting to go on to residency for oral surgery. And Dan actually is a first year student, but he's already had a degree. He's already gotten a degree in finance. The only reason why he's going back to dental school is because pressure from his family. His father, who he didn't have a really great relationship, recently passed, and the practice that he had with his wife, Dan's mother, the mother feels very overwhelmed doing it by herself and basically kind of guilts Dan into going back to dental school like his father had always wanted. So he leaves his finance job, which he really loves, to go back to dental school, and he's not great at it. And so the way that Harper helps him in this moment, like, just is very patient, a very patient teacher with him, not minding that he's not getting it right on the first try. Maybe he's slower to understand some concepts. So they just have a real connection in the beginning, and I really did like their chemistry. Now, Harper has severe anxiety, so this book has anxiety rep in it, and she deals with it in a very unhealthy way. Her friends push her. Like, she does need to seek help. The way that she's functioning is not healthy, but the way that her friends push her, it's not helping her. So I don't love her friends. So she has 3 friends who I can tell you their names, but I cannot tell you any distinguishing factors because these characters bleed into each other. There's nothing special about them. And I feel like that's a real problem with this book is everyone besides Harper and Dan are very cardboard cutout, just nothing really special going for them, and they don't bring much to the story. Like, there was this one man when Harper and Dan go out on this date, and she's freaking out about it because she's like, I don't know how to function. I don't know how to be on a date or anything. They go to this deli, and she's actually really good friends with the guy who owns the deli. Since she's an orphan and she's Jewish, they had kind of like taken her under their wing, but we only see that man that one time, and I thought that he was going to be like a parental figure in her life since she is an orphan. Apparently she goes to dinner at their houses, but we never see him again. It was just like stuff like that. Like, I felt like these characters could have had a more important impact on Harper's life, and they didn't. They really didn't. Like, the friends, I didn't even understand why Harper would be friends with these type of very outgoing, pushy people. How did you fall into friendships with these people? Because she's an introvert, she has severe anxiety, and all they do is push her. So I was very confused about that. Also very confused, which I know that people's experience with anxiety and the way they deal with it is not the same. I have anxiety, not like Harper's, because Harper is tearing herself up inside, but she also functions very well externally. Like, nobody would be able to really, truly tell that she was suffering because she's very quick to have like witty quips in a conversation. She doesn't shut down socially. When she's talking to Dan, she easily banters with him and always has something very funny to say. So it was just kind of like a weird experience for me. She never got like, didn't feel draining to her. She just had moments where internally she was like dying inside, but outwardly she was fine, which it was just a different experience to my own. So it was hard for me to just kind of like wrap my head around that. Also, I do have to point out every single male character that was not Dan or his best friend were misogynistic assholes. Like, they were horrible. They were the worst type of men. And I didn't love that either. Like, it just felt like, I don't know, everyone but Harper and Dan just did not have a lot going for them. And it made the story a little bit less interesting. Made it a little bit cliche. So I didn't super love it. I'm gonna give this book 3.5 stars. But I really enjoyed Dan's character. Dan's character was just the freaking sweetest, and I loved how patient he was with Harper and how much he reinforced, like, I'm interested in you and your quirkiness does not at all deter me, you know? Anyway, so there's that. Then I read The Devil and the Heiress by Harper St. George. I had previously read the first book in this series and then just kind of forgot about it. And I wanted an audiobook. It's on Anyplay, so I picked this one up. The heroine, Violet Crenshaw, her family own like an iron company in America. They're in England. Her parents really want one of their daughters to marry into the aristocracy. And the first book is about her older sister, August, who's actually very involved with like the business side of things. Violet doesn't want to be pushed into marrying somebody just because her parents chose them for her. And when they're kind of pulling the same bullshit that they did on August with Violet, trying to force her with this man who doesn't care about her, who would basically try to mold her into his idea of a perfect wife, a perfect countess or whatever, she decides, I'm gonna run away. Well, Christian, the Earl of Lee, he's always had like a thing for Violet. And he approached Violet's father for her hand in marriage, and he got rejected because he didn't bring as much to the table as the other suitor. So he comes up with a plan to have Violet anyway and wants to befriend her and help her with her escape plans, okay? And he's hoping that she will choose on her own to be married to him, but he really kind of manipulated the situation that way to get what he wanted, which was Violet. He's not like super destitute, but he does think that her dowry is very attractive. It would help him rebuild his estates because his father wasn't very good at managing money. So this becomes like a road trip romance. He convinces her that instead of taking the train where her family could very easily track her to her next destination, that she actually should travel in the carriage with him to Scotland. And so Violet thinks that they're just naturally kind of developing a friendship and an attraction. She doesn't know that it's always been his intention to marry her, but she feels like, oh, this is a guy who actually sees me for me. And he does, and he feels guilty about this situation because he likes her so much and he doesn't like manipulating her. So it's a very, very interesting dynamic, and I really loved it. They had to pretend to be like a married couple because there was like a carriage accident and stuff like that. So it was very interesting. I didn't love some things that happened toward the end. I felt like she was justified in being upset when she makes her discovery, but she hid something from him for a very long time towards the end. Like she was trying to prove her point, and it went on for a long time, and it just wasn't my favorite. But I did really I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed the first book in the series, but it's still a 4-star for me. Still a 4-star. And then the book that I've kind of been waiting to talk about, because I'm like, how do you talk about this book? I picked up Manacled. It's something that Jen had picked up, and she was like, I really want you to read this. It's intimidating because, okay, so Manacled is a fan fiction in the Harry Potter world of Hermione and Draco, and also like a mashup with The Handmaid's Tale, if you watch that TV show on Hulu. It's an alternate universe of what happened if they didn't win the war and other things. But okay, so this fan fiction is very long. It took me 3 days to read it. And that was like, I was on my reading game. I was reading the hell out of this book, and it took me that long. So it is a commitment. It is a commitment. There's like 3 distinct parts of the book. I think that the concept has a lot going for it to make the story very interesting and to make a person want to invest so much time in such a lengthy story. So like I said, in the beginning, they lost the war. Lots of our characters have died. Our familiar characters that we've known and loved from the Harry Potter series have been killed during the course of the war. And now Hermione, who has been kept as a prisoner in this cell that was devoid of light and sound and human contact, she's been in there for over a year. The fact that she hasn't gone insane from being deprived of all of her senses basically is a miracle. She's not okay. She has, anxiety and all that jazz. But the thing is, the Dark Lord, Voldemort, is instituting this program to repopulate the wizarding world because his forces were heavily hit as well. And since pureblood herrings are not very successful at having offsprings, he's going to use prisoners with half-blood, with muggle-born magic users like Hermione to start a breeding program, just like The Handmaid's Tale. So it's a mashup of those 2 worlds, and it fits very well together. It's a very sinister type of thing to do, and it fits very well together. So I was like very intrigued. Of course, Hermione gets assigned to Draco Malfoy. She becomes their surrogate. So yes, this book is dark. This book is dark. There's lots of suffering. Her characters go through a lot. And when I first started reading it, especially during the first part, there was things that I was nitpicking about it. Like, it needs editing. It's a fan fiction. It's written a chapter at a time. It's not really like heavily edited for pacing or anything like that. There were some repetitive things that I was just like, oh, that's not great. And Hermione and other characters roll their eyes a lot. And I was just like, every time it happened, I was like, yeah, no. Okay, but anyway, the first part of the book, I felt like I was very nitpicky about it. But I still was compelled, and I was like, this will be a 4-star read for me. Then we get to the flashback scenes, the second part of the book, and by the middle of that one, I was like hooked. I was like, okay, this author is doing something. This author has a plan, and it is very well crafted in the way that she executed it and the way that she gave us a little breadcrumbs in the beginning. And it was so good. Like, I was like messaging Jen all the time. I was theorizing. I was like, I think this is happening. This is happening. It was a ride. It was an experience. And I felt so emotionally drained in like a good way. Like, I couldn't stop thinking about these characters. I couldn't stop thinking about this situation. I couldn't stop thinking about the themes that this author brought up about war. What price is too high to pay to win? Sorry, my battery died, but is it justifiable to use means to win and save the ones that you love if you're using unethical methods? And it's just very fascinating. And the characters aren't exactly the characters that we know and are familiar with. Like, there's some dynamics that aren't the same. The trio, Hermione, Harry, and Ron, are not as cohesive as they are from the books because Hermione feels very separate and alone. She actually had been relegated to the position of healer. She's very good at potion making and charms and all that. And she was instrumental in healing those wounded on the battlefield. So there's a separation between her and Harry and Ron. And things don't happen exactly as they do on the original timeline. There's some deaths that really affect the course of events that really sway the tide in the war. And it's just very, very interesting. Very interesting to see Draco's role in this, how he became such a very high-powered Death Eater in Voldemort's army, and his motivations, his secrets that he's keeping, and the relationship that he has with Hermione, both in the past and in the present day as well. And it's so compelling. It's so compelling. And this book has 3 epilogues, and I remember Jen telling me, because she was quite a bit ahead of me, that she was like, I know it's like 1,000 pages, but I still don't want it to end. There's 3 epilogues and they're so perfect and all that. And I remember, I think I was not quite into the meat of the second part of the book, and I was just like, I'm feeling the length of this book. I don't know if I'll be at the end of this book being like, oh, I don't want it to end, because this is quite a lengthy book. But once I got there, I knew exactly what she meant, because I was so emotional, and I was just like, it's never gonna be enough. Like, there's so much suffering. There's so much suffering. And I understand why people say that this book is bittersweet. It does have a happily ever after for our couple at the end. It absolutely does. But it's just the situation. It's not so happy sunshine. Like, the world is not so happy sunshine still, you know? So it's just, there's so much that they've sacrificed, and it is a conversation for a very spoilery book review. And I feel like I'm in a book slump now because I can't stop thinking about these characters. I'm just like, how do I create a bind up of Manacled? I've gone down the rabbit hole of self-binding books because I seriously would love to have this physically. And there's a beautiful copy that was made for the author and also this artist that did the cover for the book. But of course, that's not for sale. You have to make it by yourself. And I want to. Might be a project for the summer when I have some more free time. But anyway, that was so freaking good. So freaking good. And I think it's gonna be a 6-star. I think it's gonna be a 6-star. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the 6-star. Even though in the beginning I was like, this book could use some heavy editing and some deletion of scenes that feel very repetitive, I'm still gonna give it a 6-star because the way that it made me feel at the end, it just gutted me. But also, I was so emotionally invested with these characters. Not even just Draco and Hermione as a couple, just like everything. It was just so good. So yeah. All right, that is it. That is all that I read for the first week in January, technically a little bit from December as well, which is why I have so many books to talk about. But woof, I think that this is going to be one of the last weekly wrap-ups that you see with so many books on it because I am starting my semester, so I'm gonna have a lot less free time to read and dedicate. So it might be pretty sparse. You might be only getting weekly wrap-ups after the month of January, but that's okay because I'm still going to be here and using my downtime to read and discuss some books with you. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe to get notified of any future videos that I do. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, life's better with a little HEA. Bye guys. you.